The morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Preston and Associates as Emma carefully wiped down the conference table. At 23 she had been working as part of the cleaning staff for nearly 6 months now, supporting her younger brother through college while she saved for her own education. The yellow rubber gloves she wore had become like a second skin, and she moved through the office with quiet efficiency that came from genuine care for her work. Richard Preston had built his law firm from nothing over 30 years. At 58 he carried himself with the confidence of a man who had earned every success through hard work and integrity. His silver hair and kind eyes made him approachable despite his position, and the younger staff often sought his mentoring. This morning he was preparing for one of the biggest contract negotiations of his career, representing a family-owned manufacturing company against a corporate giant trying to acquire them. Emma was polishing the water glasses when Richard entered the conference room carrying a thick stack of documents. He offered her his usual warm smile. "Good morning, Emma. Beautiful job as always." "Thank you, Mr. Preston," she replied softly, continuing her work. She had learned early on that many people looked right through service workers as if they were invisible. But Mr. Preston always acknowledged her, always remembered her name, and had even asked about her brother's progress in school. As Richard spread the contract pages across the table preparing for his client's arrival, Emma worked quietly near the credenza. She had no formal legal training, but her mother had been a paralegal before she passed, and Emma had absorbed more than she realized growing up listening to her mother discuss cases at the dinner table. Something caught her eye as she moved to empty the recycling bin. One of the contract pages had slipped to the floor near where she was working. Ordinarily she would simply place it back on the table without a glance. But a phrase jumped out at her as she bent to retrieve it. The words seemed to twist in on themselves, creating meaning that felt wrong somehow. She hesitated, holding the page. It was not her place to speak. Who was she to question legal documents prepared by teams of expensive lawyers? But her mother's voice echoed in her memory, teaching her that silence in the face of wrong was its own kind of harm. "Mr. Preston," she said quietly, "I apologize for interrupting." He looked up from his notes with patient attention. "Yes, Emma, what is it?" She approached the table, still holding the page. Her hands trembled slightly, but she steadied herself. "This clause here," she pointed with a gloved finger, not wanting to touch the document directly. "I think it might be a trap." The confidence in Richard's expression flickered. Several associates had reviewed this contract. His own paralegal had gone through it line by line. "What do you mean, Emma?" "This section about the non-compete agreement," she explained. "The way it's worded, it looks like it only applies to the current owners. But if you read this phrase here together with this paragraph on page 17, it actually extends to any future business venture by anyone who was employed by the company at the time of sale. That would include the owner's children who work there, and even the long-term employees who might want to start their own businesses someday." Richard's face went pale. He reached for page 17 and began reading. Emma continued speaking, her voice gaining strength as her mother's training came flooding back. "And here in the liability section, it appears to protect your clients from future lawsuits related to product defects. But this subsection uses known defects, which could be interpreted to mean they're actually admitting knowledge of problems that could be used against them later." Richard sat down heavily, his confident smile completely gone. He pulled the pages closer, studying them with new eyes. The young woman in cleaning uniform had just identified what could have been a catastrophic oversight. His clients would have signed away their children's futures. The family business they had spent generations building would have trapped everyone they loved. "Emma," he said slowly, "would you be willing to sit down for a moment?" She glanced at her card, uncertain. "I still have the 3rd floor to finish." "Please," he said. "This is important." She removed her gloves and sat carefully at the edge of one of the leather chairs. For the next 20 minutes they went through the contract together. Emma pointed out 3 more sections that troubled her. Richard made rapid notes, calling his paralegal and 2 associates to get back to the office immediately. When his team arrived, there was confusion at seeing the cleaning woman seated at the conference table. But Richard held up his hand. "Emma has potentially saved our clients from disaster. I want everyone to listen to what she's found." As Emma explained her concerns again, the lawyer's expressions shifted from skepticism to alarm to grudging respect. The opposing counsel had been clever. These weren't obvious traps. They were sophisticated legal landmines hidden in complex language. Richard's clients arrived shortly after. The Henderson family had owned their manufacturing business for 3 generations. Tom Henderson was 62, his daughter Sarah worked as operations manager, and his son James handled sales. They had wanted to sell to ensure their employees would be protected and their legacy would continue. Richard explained that they needed to delay the signing. As he detailed the problematic clauses, Tom's face darkened with anger while Sarah reached for her father's hand. "If we had signed this," Tom said quietly, "we would have destroyed everything. Our children would have been bound by non-compete clauses that would have prevented them from ever working in manufacturing again. Anywhere." "Yes," Richard confirmed. "And Emma is the one who caught it." He gestured toward her. The Hendersons turned to look at the young woman who had returned to standing near her cleaning cart. She felt suddenly self-conscious under their gaze. Sarah Henderson stood and walked over to Emma. Without a word she embraced her. "Thank you," she whispered. "You saved my family." Tom approached as well, his eyes wet. "How can we ever repay you?" Emma felt overwhelmed. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Richard said firmly. "Most people would have stayed silent. Emma, you spoke up even though it wasn't your place, even though you risked seeming presumptuous. That takes courage." Over the next week the contract was renegotiated. The opposing counsel was furious when Richard pointed out the problematic clauses, making it clear they had been caught. A fair agreement was eventually reached and the Henderson family sold their business on terms that protected everyone. But Richard couldn't stop thinking about Emma. She was cleaning offices when she clearly had a keen legal mind. After the Henderson deal closed, he called her into his office. "Emma, I've been thinking. Would you be interested in coming to work here as a paralegal trainee? We would sponsor your education. You would work during the day and take classes at night. It's not easy, but you've already demonstrated you have the instinct and the intelligence." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Mr. Preston, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," he smiled. "You've earned this opportunity. Though I have to be honest. The paralegal program is demanding. It will take dedication." "My mother was a paralegal," Emma said softly. "She died when I was 16. I used to think I wanted to follow in her footsteps, but after she passed I had to take care of my brother. I put those dreams away. Then it's time to take them back out," Richard said. "Your mother would be proud of you. I'm certain of that." 3 years later Emma passed the bar exam. Richard was there in the courtroom when she was sworn in as an attorney. The Henderson family attended as well. They had stayed in touch, becoming like extended family to Emma and her brother. Sarah Henderson had even started a scholarship fund in Emma's name for young people from working-class backgrounds who wanted to pursue legal careers. Because Emma had taught them all something important. Intelligence and wisdom aren't confined to corner offices and expensive suits. Sometimes the people we overlook are the very ones with the most to offer. Richard was 61 now and beginning to think about succession planning. Emma was 26 and already one of his most promising associates. She had her mother's instinct for reading contracts and something more. She had empathy. She understood that behind every legal document were real people with real lives at stake. On the day Emma won her first major case, Richard took her to lunch at the same restaurant where he had celebrated his first victory decades earlier. "You know, Emma," he said, "you didn't just save the Hendersons that day. You reminded me why I became a lawyer in the first place. To protect people. To speak up for what's right even when it's uncomfortable." Emma smiled. "You gave me a chance when you didn't have to. You saw past the yellow gloves." "No," Richard corrected gently. "You earned that chance the moment you found the courage to speak. I just had the wisdom to listen." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the city move past the windows. Two people from different generations and different worlds brought together by one moment of courage. And in that moment both of their lives had changed forever. Because sometimes the most important thing we can do is simply speak up when we see something wrong. And sometimes the most important thing we can do is listen to voices we might otherwise ignore. That's where real wisdom lives. Not in the words of a contract, but in the courage of the human heart.